In this video, we're going to look at how to make some quick and dirty graphics in Excel just to get a sense of what your data shows. Sometimes visualizing your information is much more powerful than simply looking at the numbers in rows and columns. I'm going to use some data that I used in the video for how to do a pivot table. This is New Yorker cartoon character data from 2014 that somebody else compiled. They tracked each character by ethnicity and gender, and they tried to capture things like occupation and then also the name of the cartoonist. But the two most important ones are the ethnicity and the gender. Is there a bias there in the data? Is there an unusually high number of white characters and male white characters? So let's take a look at this. So this here is the result of a pivot table that tells me how many characters were non-white and how many were white. I calculated a quick percentage, what percentage are non-white and what percentage are white. There's that formula as well. And so we can see we have 5% and 95%. So a quick and dirty way to get a chart going is to highlight the column that you want to chart, not the other ones. Insert and then you go up into in the insert menu. There's the charts section in the middle. There's a few of the main charts, or you can click on recommended charts to get to the full list. Generally, we're going to do probably a bar chart or a line chart. Let's click on the bar chart, and it gives me, I steer clear of the 3D, please. We're just going to stick with 2D. And you can see here, this is going to be a side-by-side chart. This would be a stack chart, which of course doesn't necessarily work here. If we do a side-by-side chart, we now have a very quick chart, but we don't have any labels on here. So this is the part that's a little confusing. You should now have a menu up on your screen that says Chart Design, and there's also a Format menu. Chart Design is where there's a bunch of things you're going to find useful. So the main one is this Select Data. It doesn't seem intuitive that that's where you need to go to add the labels, but it is. So we're going to click on Select Data, and you'll see here it's getting the X-axis labels and then a legend. So if you click on, and right now it just says 1 and 2, which we don't want. We want it to say non-white and white. So if we click on Edit, it'll let us go out here and highlight what we want, non-white, white. And you'll see it's putting an array in here. It's saying the labels are in this location on sheet number 3, which is the one we're in, from A4 to A5. Say OK. Now we have non-white and white. And we can say OK. There we go. You can click up in here and change your headline. And then we can also, if you double click on the vertical axis, you have some options there. You can make sure that it's set to 0 base, which is you always want. And you could also set the where those percentages are going to be. You can click on these bars and get some color options. You can, instead of, if you don't want blue, we can do a different color. And then let's go back up into the chart design menu up above, and you'll see there's add chart element. Here's where there's lots of things we can add. We can add, if it didn't already have a title, you can add that, but we already do have a title here, chart title. You can put access titles down here, so you can say percent of total. You can also, the one I like to do is data labels, and you can put it like this on the outside end. Some of these things don't work very well. It just depends on your chart. I usually like to do outside end. And let's see what else we got. Legend. If you had, we'll do this in the next one, you might need a legend. In this case we don't, because we only have one thing. So we really don't need a legend. Now we have a chart. If you you can copy and paste this out to an email or a Slack channel or wherever you want to share it with your colleagues, Or you could also, while you have it selected like this, see there's the round dots on there, if you do a print, it will automatically just print this and not everything else. Here's one other thing I liked when I'm sharing uh, data with this kind of thing with reporters or editors, is sometimes I put the legend in there, especially if there's underlying data, more than one thing, you could actually put the amounts in there. In this case, it doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? Because we've already got the labels. So that's a really, really simple chart. Let's move down here. Now we have a crosstab chart that takes those non-white and white characters and also breaks them down by female or male. And what I've done is I've done a calculation that says what percentages of the females are non-white versus white, and what percentages of the males are non-white versus white. You can see there's not a lot of difference here. But again, we can highlight these two columns that we want and insert labels. And now look, notice that it's putting the ethnicities together and then it's doing colors for the genders. So we could flip that around if we want and put it like this. So now it's doing females and males. That's that switch row column, and that again is under chart design. Let's put some labels on here. So this time our x-axis labels are here already, but we need labels for the two colors. And this one is you have to do one at a time. And so you can either go out and click out here like we did for the last one, or you can just type right in there. Say okay. So now we have and maybe, you know, here let's actually do this. We could change that. You can change out here. We could do non-white and white, and notice that it changes it automatically on your chart. I'm gonna click back on my chart. I'm gonna go back up to chart design. It's not gonna let me switch rows and columns anymore because we're now locked into this. We could change the chart type. Could go to a bar chart. There we go, like that. New Yorker cartoon characters by gender and ethnicity. I can't type. Spell. There we go. And you can make this a little bigger if you want. We can add the data labels in. There we go. Let's do one more graphic. Let's say we want to show something over time, a time series kind of thing. So here we have the number of people who died in Minnesota from an opioid-related death, and I have the total deaths each year, which I generated from a pivot table, or maybe the government agency gave you this. Now so one of the interesting things is when you have years, Excel, we can highlight all of this. And sometimes Excel treats that year as a number, and you will end up with, I'm going to do a line, you will end up with actually two lines. It's doing the year and the deaths. So a couple ways you can fix this. First of all, don't select the year when you create your chart. If you already have it here, you can go back over here and pull on that blue and pull it back, and it'll get rid of that year. So now we're tracking just the deaths. We can go up under select data, and the horizontal axis, let's put the years in there by highlighting our years. Say okay. We can go to add chart elements, and we can get rid of the legend. We don't need to say deaths. We can add, well, we can edit the chart title. Here's where maybe you want to add a data table at the bottom that would give, if you're sharing this with reporters or your editors, it would give the exact numbers there so that they could also see that in addition to the trend line. You can add the data labels, but what it's going to do is the automatic one is it's going to put it right, all of them on there. You can get fancy in here if you want to. Data labels. There's more data label options where you could try to get it to only show certain ones, but I haven't spent too much time working on that, since I usually use this just for these quick and dirty kind of charts that allow me to see the trend. And this one is particularly interesting because you see this dip in 2010, which I suspect is probably a data error, that somehow there were deaths that year that somehow were not captured as opioid related deaths. It seems kind of weird that it would dip like that, where all the other years it's a pretty steady climb. I had a data set one year where it was real estate sales, and I thought for sure the data was perfectly fine until I made a chart like this, and the line was going up, 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 and then all of a sudden it plummeted to zero, and then went back up again. And it turns out I was missing an entire year of data, and I didn't realize it until I charted it. So these kind of charts are a good way to go. Before I sign off, let's quick look at the various chart types in here. There's column charts and bar charts are the same, just one's flipped one way than the other way. Line charts should only be used for time series, where your x-axis represents time and a continuous time. Let's say we only had let's say we only had 2005, 2010, and 2015. You wouldn't want to do a time series with just those 3 years. Then you would want to do bars, because it's not continuous like that. Let's see what else. Other chart types we have in here: pie charts. Stick with just a few categories, not this many that it recommends. Scatter plots are possible in Excel, and those you can also get a trend line to put on them. Some of the others, sometimes a tree map is interesting to see kind of which one is the biggest bucket. This is kind of an alternative to a pie, especially when you have more categories than a pie can really handle. So you can see there's lots of different options here, and I suggest you research them. But usually a simple column chart, bar chart, or line chart is probably going to get the job done and show you some basics on your data before you move forward.